Hi, I'm Lois.
And I'm Stacey.
And you are listening to Whose Girl Are You? Today we have two guests with us. This is a new thing. We've never done two guests at the same time, so this is awesome.
Yeah.
We have Jennie and Maija. Thank you both for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I'm excited because I don't know either of you, so I love getting to know new people, so this is going to be great.
So we're going to talk about singleness today, about being single, and maybe more specifically about being single in the ALC. And we're going to see where this conversation goes.
Mm-hmm. We usually take a lot of rabbit trails that end up who knows where, and that's fine. Sometimes
Yes.
They're the most interesting parts of what we end up talking about, so don't feel like you have to be pigeonholed into something. If you have a thought and you want to go down that road, like, go.
Yes.
You have our permission to do that.
Absolutely.
But the first question I have to ask both of you, and maybe Jennie, you go first since you jumped on first. Whose girl are you?
Whose girl am I? Are you asking for like who my parents are? Because first off, you know, I'm a child of God, so I'm definitely,
Amen.
yeah. So that's first and foremost. But yes, my parents, Ed Bergman and Jerry Lynn Holmgren Bergman, are my parents, and I have grown up in the Pacific Northwest, specifically in Clatskanie, Oregon.
Nice. Thank you. Next, Maija, right?
Yes, it's Maija. So I'm Maija Lampinen, and I am the daughter of Stan Lampinen from Upper Michigan and Shirley Holmgren from the Seattle area. And you had asked earlier how Jennie and I know each other, and that is it. Our mothers are sisters. So we are first cousins, good friends, and travel companions. So we've done a lot of things together over the years. Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Nice. So another UP connection, which I love. So I have to ask, what part of the UP?
Hancock.
That's where I'm from.
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we gotta go down this road for just 1 second.
Absolutely.
Right? I won't talk about this too much, but what year did you graduate from high school?
Oh, so I actually am from the Seattle area. My dad was from the UP.
Your dad was from the UP. Your dad was from Hancock.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is your dad still in Hancock?
No, he's in Seattle. He came out to Seattle in the mid-70s when he was enlisted in the military. So he was in the Air Force. And so he attended Seattle Church, and that's where he met my mom.
Okay.
They probably met before that on and off. You know how the ALC is. Everyone kind of meets each other at services and events. But he was stationed at McChord Air Force Base at the time. It's now called Joint Base Lewis McChord. And so he would be working during the week, and then he would spend weekends at my grandparents' house. So my mom was living in Seattle, down in Seattle at the time. But when she would come back to visit, obviously, and then obviously at church, then they got to know each other through the young kids groups there in Seattle.
Oh, nice. So do you go back to Hancock at all, ever?
I do. In fact, I have a trip scheduled there for mid-July. My cousin is getting married, and so I'll be going back for the wedding and a mini family reunion. So I'm really excited to see everybody. It's been since 2019 since I've been back there. So.
Wow. All right. I'm also going in July, and I'll be at a wedding. And if we're at the same wedding, I'm going to
That'll be awesome.
It's not by any chance a Dunstan wedding, is it?
Yes, it is. A Dunstan is my first cousin, and I'm playing.
Whose girl are you?
Listen.
There's a connection.
Somehow, and don't ask me how, but through my mom's side of the family, we're also related to the Dunstans. So I don't know, Maija. You guys might be related to me.
Well, I'm related to the Lampinen side of the Dunstans there because my aunt is Robbie. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So
yeah, we're all related
through marriage, whatever. Well, anyway, I'll see you at the wedding in July.
That'll be awesome. That'll be awesome.
I'll be there as well. Yeah.
See, we're friends already.
Yeah. Awesome. It's nice. Now we'll know someone at the wedding.
I'll have family there, so.
So anyway, I'm done with that.
So we started chatting. The reason this conversation came up in the first place is I was chatting with Jennie at the campout about being single in the ALC. And I don't even know, we didn't explore it very much, but you know, my thought always is, oh, would this be a good podcast? And so anybody who's talking to me ever, I'm always thinking, would this be a good podcast? No.
Do you forewarned.
Be forewarned.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm the same. I do the same thing. Anytime I'm having an interesting conversation with someone, I'm like,
Exactly.
I don't even know how we got onto the topic. I don't remember.
I don't either.
It just kind of flowed into that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So many good conversations just flow into one thing or another. So
Exactly. And so I asked Jenny, would you be willing to talk about this on the podcast? And she said yes, and here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. It's quite a topic. I mean, you asked me and I was like, well, we were talking about it in the group, but then it's like, oh boy, it's such a personal topic, so I did say, can I think about it, and thought about it more. And then I was like, okay, I think I can do this. And then texted Maija and say, hey, I brought you up as well. Sorry, I threw you under the bus. Here we go.
I think it's vital to talk about though, because I want to hear some positive stuff about it, right? Some positive things about it, because I feel like for whatever reason, there's always this negative connotation, like, oh, poor thing,
Oh yeah.
Oh, poor thing, they're still single. And I'm like, I always think to myself, why would you say poor thing? Because married life's no walk in the park either, right? So
Right.
I want to hear the good and the bad of it. Like, there's got to be both sides, and we don't always hear both sides. People just make assumptions. So I kind of want you to help blow some of those assumptions out of the water if possible. So, like,
no pressure.
can you think of something that would be a positive of being single, of singleness?
Well, I do think that it is a little freeing in a way that, when I wake up in the morning, especially on a Saturday morning, the day is 100% mine. I mean, that's selfish. In a way, it's selfish, but, I can get in my car and I can go where I want to go or not. So in a way, it's a little freeing, but it's also not. So, you got both sides of the coin when you're talking about being single, because you do have that freedom. You can spend the money the way you want to spend it. You can spend your time the way you want to spend it. But on the flip side, I think we're people and we want to be surrounded by people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there's both sides to it. And, like Maija said in the introduction, we're travel buddies. So you can take a trip and you don't have to look at somebody else and say, hey, I want to go spend the weekend with somebody, or I want to go out of the country, So there's that freedom of just being able to make the decision and go.
Mm-hmm.
That's one aspect that I can see as being very, very positive.
Mm-hmm.
But Maija has probably her own perspective.
Yeah, I know this is a challenge too. Obviously, we can't speak for every single person in the ALC or in the general. I mean, there's a ton of people and everyone has their own experiences, but my personal experience is similar to what Jenny is saying. I have found that I have the ability to pursue different types of things that you may not be able to when you are in a relationship or responsible for people. But the other thing is that I've been able to invest more time in family than I might have been. My nieces, my nephews. I see Jenny shaking her head, yes, as well. But also some of my cousins. I've been able to get to know some of my cousins from around the country when I've traveled, because I've had a little bit more of luxury to travel. It's not like I'm planning for 4 or 5 people and the expense of 4 or 5 people. It's myself. And to be honest with you, I don't care if I sleep on a couch. I don't care if I sleep on the floor. I'm good. Just if you're willing to have me, I'm going to come visit you. And so I feel like that has been an incredible blessing that I may have missed out. I can't say I would have, but I may have missed out on some of those opportunities if I was needing to consider other people, even children or anything like that. Obviously, there's pros and cons to everything. So that has been a huge blessing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, last night I have 3 nephews that are local, and, texted them and say, hey, meet me down at the pizza place for dinner. Let's celebrate school being done. So yeah, being very active. I know Maija and I are both very active in our nieces and nephews, their lives, probably a lot more than we would if I had my own family. So that is truly a blessing to be able to really spend some time with them and get to know them really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
And what a blessing for the kids and the parents alike to be able to have aunts that are able to spend time and pour into them like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we both have been blessed by having adults in our lives who have poured into our lives, both single and married. But, I had a couple uncles who were single until I was a little older. And just that one-on-one time, or just even being able to have another adult pay attention to you, I feel like it's not, I don't even want to say it's to pay it forward, because it's really not that. They bless me so much just by being interested in me and being part of my life too, especially without kids. And I love kids. And so being able to have nieces and nephews and my friends' kids part of my life helps fill a little bit of that void. But then I get to send them home, right? And it's quiet. And I'm not up at 2:00 in the morning with whatever
the bad side of parenting.
Sickness and nightmares and all that side of parenting. Exactly. So you get a little bit of that.
That's good.
So then, go ahead, you go.
I was just going to ask, did you ever come close to getting married?
I will say no. I mean, I've had some, people that you hang out with and things, but I think that when I was really, really young, I made the decision, going to public school, all that kind of stuff, made the decision that I wasn't going to enter into a relationship that the partner also wasn't a person of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I made that decision real young, and I would pray about it a lot as well. Like, okay, God, prepare me for somebody, prepare him for me type of prayers I remember doing when I was really young. And I think because of that, God puts a shield around you and helps you through a lot of those first attractions that you may have with somebody that God knows won't lead anywhere. So, and then when I got into my 20s, of course, hanging out with people within our church family. But when I look back, I don't think that there's anybody in that history that I think, oh, no, I missed out. I should have taken that further than it went. I don't have any of those regrets or any of those what might have happened moments, even though I, along the way had made some really great friendships with guys, but it just never went further. And I truly think it's because of all those prayers and God saying, okay, no, this isn't the right one for you, and kind of leading it away.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I'd have to honestly say, no, I have not been close to getting engaged to anybody or being married. And I really attribute that to God closing those doors and saying, this isn't right for you.
Yeah. That's a wise way to look at it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the only way to look at it. I mean, really.
Well, I'm just thinking, how was she so wise at such a young age?
Yeah.
And I think it's because I grew up in Klatskin, a small town, nobody in church was my age. So I didn't grow up with guys in our church family in school and in church. So I really do think that, and then seeing, Maija and I, our families are very, very close in where, we had amazing examples, not only in our parents, but in our aunt and uncles and in our grandparents. And I think realizing at a young age, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
Helped me to really direct my prayers when I started turning like 12, 13, 14, those ages. And I would look at my classmates. And like I said, I had some great classmates, and, everybody starts getting involved in relationships at school. And I just realized I don't really want that if it's not going to lead to a godly marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think when you set that, and I truly believe that was God working in my heart, it just wasn't me making these decisions.
Right.
But yet I prayed about them. And so to look back now and say, well, boo-hoo me, I never got married. Well, I can look back and say, well, it's truly God's plan that I am not married.
Right.
There's some hardships that come with that, but there are no regrets with it, because when you pray about it, I might say, well, God didn't answer my prayer. Well, actually he did, just not the manner in which I thought he would, but he did. He closed those doors that weren't right, whether it was a relationship or a friendship with somebody within the church who had faith or not. It doesn't matter. I wasn't supposed to be with those individuals. So.
Yeah. I would say that my experience is really similar. I do remember my mom when I was young, just talking about praying for a mate and praying that God would work with it within their heart. to be a godly man in that. And I think that's really, really important. And it doesn't mean that it still won't happen. It's just not yet, or it may never happen. We never know. But I think also not having pressure from family to get married. I know that certain areas of the church, certain families within the church, it's incredibly important to get married young. And so for folks who may not be ready, it may be a pressure. I have some friends who felt pressured to get married at a young age because of the culture they were in. But I feel like I was really blessed to grow up in a congregation where they accepted me for who I am at whatever stage of life I'm in with no pressure. And obviously people are interested and want to matchmake and various other things. And that's, that's great. I really appreciate the fact that people are interested in me as an individual, but not having that like severe pressure that you have to conform to this, you have to do that, because God's will is not the same for every one of us. And to pray that, and I guess that prayer has always been just, Lord, lead me where you want me to be. Lead me. And I want to be at the center of your will, because that's the only place that I will actually truly be happy and have joy. And just, I don't know how to describe it, but I feel like what Jenny was saying is having those doors closed. Sometimes it was hurtful. Mm-hmm. But God works in you and helps you to grow and to become something. And when we talked about praying, I mean, I never prayed for a career, but God gave me a wonderful career. Mm-hmm. And so it's so interesting how God answers those things. He knew I'm a very much of an extrovert. I need people. I need a lot of that. And that's one of the challenges of being single, especially living alone. While we were talking about, you get to get up on a Saturday and do what you want. Yeah, that's great. But you're also by yourself a lot. Yes. And as an extrovert, that is really challenging. I know some of my introverted friends are a little bit more, that's maybe not as hard for them. There's other areas that are harder for them. So, I mean, I need to go to the grocery store sometimes just to say hi to somebody. And I know that's weird, but that is
no,
me.
I don't think it's weird at all, because honestly, I'm an extrovert married to a severe introvert, and my kids are more introverted as well. And when COVID happened and everything shut down, I had to stay home and I'm in a house with introverts who are just like living their best lives. And I'm slowly dying inside because I need people. And they're just like, we're enough for each other. Like, just the brothers were like, they each had each other and they're like, that's enough. And my husband's like, you're enough for me. I'm like, sorry, you're not enough for me. Like, that's not filling my extroverted needs.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. On the flip side, I'm an introvert. And it can be, when I bought my house and I knew that I wasn't going to have any roommates, I really had to self-talk myself, because it can be dangerous for an introvert, because we can be so okay with isolation, but yet it's not healthy.
No.
I can literally leave my job on a Friday morning, enter my house, and if I don't go to church on Sunday, not see anybody until I go back to my job.
And be fine with it.
And be fine with it, but yet on some level know that this isn't healthy. Mm-hmm. We are made for relationships, and God wants us to have those relationships. So, on the flip side, I mean, I will make myself go to the store to see people. And in class, and we're so small, I'm bound to run into somebody that I know and chat in the Safeway aisle the grocery aisle for like a half an hour, and that's fine. But it is part of the struggle of being single, and of making sure that I keep those relationships fresh and focused and important.
I love that we have an introvert and an extrovert speaking to the same things, because it really gives a really full picture of different dynamics of that.
Yes. Yeah. Do either of you think that there's less pressure now than there was, say, 20 years ago? I feel like it's changed.
I'm not sure if it's changed because culture has changed, or it's changed because I'm older and therefore I'm no longer marriage age.
Okay.
If you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, because, Maija talked about it, people out of the kindness of their heart wanting to, set you up with others. And you get that a lot in your 20s and a little bit into your 30s. And then it kind of goes away. And I'm not sure if that shift has happened because I've gotten older, and people may think, she's into her career. Maybe she doesn't want a family of her own. So they just stop asking. I hope that it's changed in the culture, like what Maija was saying, we all have friends who felt pressured, and there are still certain families that's where your glory comes from, is from having that family. I don't get the impression though that it's the majority.
Right.
Right.
But there are still young people. I chatted with a young person here recently, and we were talking about goals, and I'm in the know about local jobs and things like that. So I was just pointing out, hey, if you let me know what you're looking for in a job, if I hear something, I'll just pass on information. And the individual said, well, my real aspiration and my real goal is to get married. And this person, as far as I know, isn't dating anybody. And I just had to take a little break and be like, that's great. Pray for that. And I hope it comes, but also don't shut the doors to other opportunities that God's presenting to you.
Right.
Yeah. Cause both Maija and I have talked about this. We did not pray for a career. And here we are. So if we hadn't to listen to or accepted the fact that God was opening other doors for us that weren't a family, then I think that our lives would be really depressing. And both of us, we have shut doors on careers, and another door has been opened in a different location or a different direction. And it's just amazing to look back and say, oh, God did that.
Yeah. To see him working in those situations months before they actually came to fruition. And, you don't even realize it until you look back and you start talking to other people and realize all of the chess pieces that God is moving in order to make certain things happen is incredible. And it's a good reminder of God's faithfulness too. And I think sometimes when you tend to get, I think we all want companionship, and you kind of tend to focus on that a little bit more than you probably should. It's just good to remember God's faithfulness in those times when you've really seen it well orchestrated, or just kind of it's come to mind and it's been made a real impression. He's worked so much in so many of our lives that we don't even see. But to look back at those little moments, there's a song that goes, will you shine your light of faithfulness, like in the darkness type of a thing. And sometimes when you're in that little darker area, just to look back at that light of faithfulness is so, it just kind of recalibrates and puts you back on, okay, this is where God has me right now. And I need to glorify him in my season, in my age, whatever I'm at. He's asking me to work. And I actually have prayed a lot about even mission trips and various other things. And he keeps directing me to work, which was really, really frustrating, like volunteering in professional organizations. And I was like, man, I was ready to go do World Concern and Foreign Mission and do all this stuff. And he closed those doors for some reason at that particular time and gave me all these work and professional things. And I'm like, well, obviously this is where I need to glorify him where I'm at right now. And maybe that's not a no for the future. It's maybe a no for right now. And to kind of just sit there and process through and accept that, like Jenny said, and then you move forward, and he opens so many incredible doors and friendships and opportunities that if you just didn't take that step of faith and go do it, you wouldn't ever experience.
Yeah. And I think that God lets our light shine, even at work. I mean, and you don't even realize it because, I've worked in a lot of nonprofits and with some government contract stuff. And so it's not like I have a job where I can share the word of God. It's actually almost the opposite.
What kind of jobs do you girls have? Can I ask? Because I don't even know any. I have no idea what you guys do.
Yeah. So right now I am working at Lower Columbia College. It's a community college. And my job title is Workforce Education Manager. So I've only been at this job for 2 years, but I help navigate industry partners and connect them with the college itself. And so anything business related, partnerships with industry and business, and how the college can help provide college courses to employees and things like that. So that's really general. But in the past, I've worked for nonprofits a lot in the social work field. So you're working a lot with people. And I think that throughout the years, God has allowed me to express, yes, I am a Christian. And that's the center of my life. And I think that by your actions and just who you are as a Christian shines that light of God. And either people will ask you questions or they will just embrace you for who you are. And it's amazing the little tiny notes that I would get even on my car dash, and be like, hey, Jenny, you're the reason why. And then they go on and say some things. And it's like, okay, God put me here, to help this individual.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that as a career, we do have to look at it that way. And we do need to let that light shine because we never know who needs that.
Yeah,
and
totally.
we are that person. And I think that it gives us a lot of fulfillment knowing that that's how God wants to use us right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I work for the Port of Everett up here in northeast Seattle, and I handle all the procurement and contracting for the port. So it's a little bit of construction, a little bit of engineering and architectural procurement, but it's a lot of strategy as well. So it's strategic sourcing. There's a difference between buying. You buy because you need to buy. You need to buy a tire. You need to do this. Strategic sourcing is a little bit more into things like what's the best value? How can we get the best value and the best team to provide the product that we need or the solution that we need? So I do a lot of that. I also manage the bottom of the funnel. Everything kind of flows downhill. And that might just be because I'm interested in pretty much everything. I know that it sounds weird, but I'm getting my toenails done at the, salon, and I'm reading engineering news records. So random things to do. But yeah, so I do a lot of that. And then I'm also the president for the association, the Washington Institute for Public Procurement. And then there's a national, we're just a chapter. And so I work with that and do a little bit of, it's a lot of helping people get, it's almost like even an hourglass. I'm kind of that middle of the hourglass. People are doing a lot of work. Then they have to come through me and we kind of get them taken care of, and then they go out and do what they need to do. So I get people to guess whether it's construction or buying equipment or whatever it ends up having to be. So, and then, and I think what Jenny said, God just uses you wherever you are, and he calls us to be faithful. There's that one song that talks about, whether or not you're picking Legos up off the living room floor for the 14th time today, or you're flipping burgers or cleaning toilets or whatever, wherever God has called us to be, he calls us to glorify him. And it doesn't always come like with a consciousness. Like Jenny says, sometimes it comes just by living who you are. And he gives these opportunities that sometimes are incredibly scary. I'll be very honest. Like, really, should I say something in this situation with these people? And sometimes God has said no. And he's just had me sit there and learn and listen and understand. Like, I have a lot of friends who have no beliefs that are similar to mine. Let's just put it that way. We're very culturally different, but we can be friends. And I can understand that they have a heart of compassion, and I can pray that God will use that heart of compassion to turn them to him, because they're very, very passionate about what they believe, which, isn't biblical. And so being able to sit and listen and learn, and then be that person that when they do need to talk, I've had a number of people come and talk to me when they've lost people, and they don't want to take it any further, but they need that little bit of assurance or that reassurance from somebody who is more founded than I'll be thinking about you and sending good vibes type of a person, right? And so it depends on where they are in their life. And I recently had a colleague that I've only met maybe 3 or 4 times in person, but mainly on Zoom. And we were on a way to a conference, and she happened to be sitting in the row ahead of me in the airplane. And there was an empty seat right next to her. And I could just see her shoulders were kind of heaving as we were taking off. And I started praying about it. I'm like, God, is she panicking, or is there what's going on? And I'm like, okay, well, if we level out and she's good, then, I'll let it go. But if she's still kind of looking agitated, I'll go up and sit next to her. So I went up and sat next to her, because it got worse. And I thought, well, even if she's having a panic attack, at least maybe a friendly face will help. No, her son was having some massive crisis, and she had just mentioned casually in the airport right before. She said something to somebody. She says, well, I'm a person of faith, and X and X for some reason. So I knew I could just give her a hug, and I just said, do you want me to pray with you? And she said, yes. So we were able to pray. And that's not something that if she hadn't said that one word, that she was a person of faith, I may not have felt free enough to just ask, can I pray for you?
Yeah.
But because I felt like God had me hear that conversation she had with somebody else, just to open that door for my own freedom to ask somebody, because that's not in my nature. I don't push my faith on people. I'm willing to share if they want to talk about it and make statements. So sometimes God places us in places that are very difficult at times. And to try and sit there next to somebody for 3 hours and not know what you're going to get on the other end of the phone when you land is, those are uncomfortable situations, but then you just know that, you know what, it's not me, it's God. So as much as I'm going to blunder through this, praying that God will work in that person's heart. And so, like I said, I've met her 3 times in person, but God put us in the same professional association and in the same board for some reason.
I just keep thinking, as I hear both of you talking, I keep thinking of how throughout the Bible it's kind of woven through about if we just trust and obey, he's going to provide and protect. You know, and your stories just keep saying that this is true, this is true, this is true. Like you keep trusting and obeying and he keeps providing and protecting. And it's just, what a beautiful way to talk about it. I just keep thinking of Apostle Paul too, and he says, like, if by all means, if you can remain single, then do so, because you can like give yourself so much more fully to God in whatever it is that he calls you to do. And as soon as you have that spouse, like you're limited now, because now you're most likely going to have children, and that comes with a whole nother thing, you know?
I mean, it can be very hard. I mean, for those that are just going out into the workforce and you're surrounded from people from all walks of life, all different belief systems or not. And they can get very vocal, you know, especially at that lunch table if you're in a situation where people, you know, gather for lunch. And I've been on those tables where people who are anti-Christ will just, you know, go for it and just say little comments just to see what you'll do. And, you know, they're testing you and they're trying to agitate you. And, you know, I remember at one place I worked, I would say a prayer before I left my office and went and sat at the table, because I felt like God wanted me to sit at that table. He didn't want me to have lunch at my desk. He's like, nope, you're here, go have lunch with these people. And oftentimes he would shut my mouth. You know, and that was his way of showing that, nope, this isn't going to bother you. I've got my shield around you. They're going to say what they say and let it be. Other times he would open my mouth, just a one little comment. And usually people would like kind of silence themselves, you know, and I used to say, you know, when they start talking about, you know, Christians this, Christians that. And one time I remember saying, you know, I'm a Christian. When have I ever done that? And the whole table was just silent. I'm like, Christians are people. Just don't judge me for what you've heard on the news or, you know, or how somebody else is acting. So, but oftentimes God would shut my mouth and say, don't respond. It's not worth it. You know, you're not going to change their minds. They're just trying to, you know, get you upset. And I think that when we, as a Christian, we go out into the workforce, we need to remember to put that shield of God on, because it is hard. It's hard, and they're going to attack you, and you have to just let it go because God's got it. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know where you live exactly, Jenny, like how much, like I don't know that area as well, but Seattle?
Oh, we're the same. Yeah, Seattle,
okay,
Oregon.
It's the same. Okay.
Yeah, my coworkers are very happy that we're in progressive states. Very progressive out here, you know, and that says a lot, you know, and they're very, very happy about how progressive we are. And, you know, and I just you have to let it go, because you're not going to change their minds. If people come to you and they really want to know, yes, you have the conversations and you share your faith. And there are a lot of people that I've also worked with who are Christians, and we do share moments with each other and we support each other. But unfortunately, the louder voices, you know, once someone finds out you're Christian, the devil likes to get in there and try to shake you and get you in a corner. So if people are in that situation where they do end up in a career or they're in a job or, you know, out there working in that world setting, praying is crucial, you know.
Absolutely.
Even throughout the days, you know, throughout the day, I can find myself saying, okay, God, here I go. You know what I'm walking into, and, you know, give me the words to share or not. And it's I would say a constant need of drawing on your faith and asking God to help you through it, because oftentimes the words just don't come to what you're facing. And I've come from a world of social work where I've dealt with a lot of individuals on a lot of different things. And the nonprofit world oftentimes is in front of all of these new movements that are coming down. And so, I've seen a lot and had to be at conferences that, they're really marching that progressiveness and the woke movement.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to sit there and quietly pray, okay, God, do I remain seated in this conference or do I get up and take a break and go for a walk around the block? Do I need to be here to hear this?
Yeah. What an interesting time in culture that
you
guys are placed in those kind of positions that you're placed in. And both of your positions seem pretty influential on others and like pretty heavy responsibility. It sounds like for both.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you have to pray too that you can, like what Jenny is saying, is to represent God in love too, because because I think a lot of times our natural human instinct is to be defensive for God, if you will, about God's word and some of that, but that doesn't get us anywhere as humans. And to really pray that we could show his love and not acceptance of everything, but his love. And so, you work with people who have lifestyles that are so counter to the Bible, but to still be friends with them, or at least friendly with them, to still show them the same courtesies and the same everything that you would anyone else and not treat them as if, they're dirt.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's just something that you really have to pray that God, and then when it does come up about what you believe, is to talk about what you believe, not what you don't believe. Is to really kind of put it in that, I believe the Bible and this is what the Bible says versus, I don't believe that that's the right lifestyle. Those don't lead anywhere. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm not as vocal as Jenny. Jenny has had to be in a lot more conversations like that. Where I work now tends to be slightly more conservative than that, but I have worked in an education setting where it has been very progressive. And you just pray that God you're just like a little firefly sometimes, or maybe you're a little bit more than that, who knows, but you just kind of go about what God has called you to do and be faithful and trust that he will be faithful in return.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely hard. But God has always shined through. I think I'm not perfect. I'm sure I've said bad things. I've said the wrong thing to people, but I do think that showing that love is first and foremost. And like Maija said, learning how to communicate so you're not putting blames on somebody else, but it's truly, you're only explaining what my life is all about and what God has done for me. And I think that if we can learn to do that as Christians, if we can stop, hammering and yelling at people for their lifestyle and just say, hey, this is how God has led me to live my life. And this is how I can get through the bad moments. Lost my sister when she was young, and people ask, well, how did you get through that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like, well, the Holy Spirit is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I don't know what I'd do without it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm sure they see something different in you guys, like a piece that they don't have.
Yeah. And they don't understand where it is, where does that come from? And obviously I was working when that happened. So I was able to then share, okay, this is what's going on. This is how I'm getting through it. And it does not erase it, but man, does it sure help.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I know people are going to wonder, because I'm wondering how old exactly, if you don't mind me asking. I know you're not supposed to ask a woman her age, but I feel like it's relevant to this topic.
Yeah, I'll share. I am just shy of 50. I cannot believe it. In a couple months, I'll turn 50 years old, and it's been amazing, and hopefully have another several decades ahead of me. But yeah, can't believe it. It's just all my birthdays have never bothered me at all, but this one is just kind of weird.
I've heard that about 50. I'm not quite there. I have a few years to go, but I'm getting near it, and my friends are marching into it this year, some of them. And so we've been talking about 50 a lot. I'm like, why does 50 feel so different? And I think it's because for the majority of us, we're past the halfway point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty like at 40, you're like, oh, I could live to 90. But at 50, you're like, can I live to 101? I don't know. You know?
Yeah.
So I think it feels different, but that's just.
And I also think it feels like, I mean, like Maija said, we don't know what's ahead of us. God could grant us a marriage, you know, in the near future or in the distant future. But I think for me, 250 was like, okay, if I'm allowed, you know, if God says you're going to get married, the fact that I'm not going to have children.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the one that's like, when you hit 50, it's like, oh, you know, that's probably not a reality anymore. And of course, God works miracles. And if that is to happen, then that's to happen. But if you think about it, I mean, 50 years old with a baby and a toddler, you know, that's a lot, you know, and let's be real about this. You know,
there's a reason we have kids when we're young, right?
And obviously, if it was to happen, if I was to have a biological child, that would be the will of God. If I'm to adopt children, that would be the will of God. But in actuality, you know, science tells me I've got like a 1% chance of getting pregnant. So I think that probably leading up to being 50 and being single, that probably hit me harder than just the number.
That makes a lot of sense, actually, because you're coming to terms with some things that, because for a long time you're like, this might happen. And now you're like, this probably won't happen. And when that shift happens, it's something you have to probably come to terms with. Oh yeah. Yeah. And it's part of that, you gotta let go and you have to realize, and it's almost a mourning thing in its own.
Yeah, you have to grieve it.
You have to grieve it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I had learned even coming into my 40s, that the chances were much, much slimmer. And then I had heard someone say that you have to grieve not only that, but also not getting married young and having all those experiences. So while God has given us great lives, there are things that we feel like we've missed out on. Or even when you watch your kids, your friends, you know, kids graduate and all that fun stuff, you're not part of it and you never will be.
Right.
So that's something you have to grieve. But then you know how grief is, right? Everyone has gone through grief where it's in waves and there's a lot of contentment. And then the devil comes in and you need to get pointed back to who God is. And I don't think that that's just alone for people who are single. I think that's everyone. And you know, Lois, you talked a little bit on one of your posts about a lady who has some young kids who mentioned how lonely she felt at church. I think that's every one of us. We go through that at different times, and it really depends on who's around and what's going on and maybe what else has happened. Who knows if it's hormones or whatever. Everything goes on with whatever we are as humans. And for us to really remember that everyone has their own things that they're struggling with and to really just try to be a little bit open. And there's that song like Open My Eyes That I May See, talks about obviously the word, but it's also about the other people in our lives. And I think that's one of the things as being single is when we're talking about being able to do stuff on our own, but there comes a challenge of selfishness too. You can kind of bury yourself in yourself and not really look at other people, but really asking God to help you understand where you need to invest your time and your energy and your love and your focus. And some weeks it's easier than others.
Yeah, it is.
So, Maija, I don't think you're trying to dodge it. I think you might have forgotten, but I'm kind of wondering how old you are.
Oh yeah, no, I'm 40.
You're 40?
47.
47.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yep.
Oh man, you guys, you're actually like such an inspiration, to be honest. But I'm also like, Maija keeps bringing up lyrics to songs, and I love that because songs speak to me on a deep level too, where they can reach a part of my soul. I think that nothing that someone says ever like reaches those places that it's like, wow, someone sings these songs that you're like, they understand other people go through this, and this is exactly how I feel at this moment. And so you keep bringing that up, but also I keep thinking about one of the most misquoted scriptures, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, which is about contentment, really. It's about like whether I have a lot or whether I have a little or whether I'm in jail or whether I'm not. Like I've learned this secret to be content with what the Lord has given me. And I feel like I see that in both of you too. And I think it's beautiful.
Well, I think the devil hits us hard.
Sure.
Just like Maija said, just like he does the young moms who are in that stage of life, he hits us hard. And, even I've had people at work, well, Jenny, you don't have to be married to be a mom, you know, and they're trying to encourage me to, and I'm like, oh, I understand that. I get that. I know, but that's not the path I want to walk. I don't want to be that single mom. So the devil comes to us. I mean, he even comes to us, people within our own church body and our brothers and sisters in Christ, and the devil uses them too. And so, yes, we are content, but that's only through grace of God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's from the fact that you are dependent on him.
Yes.
For sure.
And I think going back to one of your earlier questions on one of the benefits, and I think of being single, and at times it is that ability to kind of spend more time in the Word. I know from a lot of moms who are raising kids that time alone is very precious in general. And I have the luxury sometimes of doing a 2-hour Bible study, just me and, just sitting there and kind of letting things go where it goes and having tea and some of that kind of stuff. And so I try to sometimes look for that when I'm feeling a little like, I would like something different in life. Yeah. But you're like, okay, well, there's all these positives as well. And so you have to do that. Yeah.
So also, if we want to circle back, is the pressure still there for these girls to feel like they need to get married when they're young? And I would say I definitely still see it.
Mm-hmm.
My experience personally, my mom, I was telling Lois this before you guys jumped on, my mom was like concerned that I was going to be an old maid, she called it, and I was 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You better get on this. Like, what are you, like, you're going to miss your opportunity type of thing. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Because she's like, by the time I was your age, I was already married and had 2 kids. And so like, I felt like such a slacker. So like, I did feel that pressure personally. And I did get married at 21, and 25 years later, here I am. But these girls, like, so I have a heart for the youth, like the high schooler youth, not the little youth. Not toddlers. Plus it's my grandson. They're just, I don't relate as well. So when I'm with the high school girls, they're coming up to where they're getting ready to graduate from high school. And if they were raised the whole time thinking, I just want to grow up, graduate high school, get married, have a family, be a stay-at-home mom, and it's not, they don't have a boyfriend. They don't have like that in their path right now. They really are floundering when they're finishing high school because they don't know what to do. And they're so single focused on like just looking for a guy. And I'm not in the youth group anymore because of a variety of reasons. I'm serving other places now, but I would always tell them, you guys, like, just seek after the Lord, like seek after the Lord, do what he calls you to do, grow in him, experience all of that, like let him grow you up a little bit. And I said, if you're just focusing on him and it's in his will that you're to get married, like he will put someone there. You don't need to go looking. It's kind of the, seek first the kingdom of God and all his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. It's like, you can't search for all those added on things and then, you want the gifts, but not the giver, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're kind of missing the mark there. And so I'm just like, just do that. And I don't know if it's because like that is what ended up happening to me, is I was just seeking the Lord and doing that. And, he put a guy in my path that I was like, oh, sure. We got married. I wasn't as wise as Jenny was talking about. Like, I was just kind of like, let's try this, so, but I wasn't looking for it, I guess is what I'm saying. I wasn't looking for to get married or whatever. I had other plans, and then he came along and changed those plans, and I'm fine with it. But I do still see the pressure on these girls. And then when they're not finding these spouses, they're just floundering and they're feeling really defeated. Like, why doesn't a guy want me? And I'm like, you're 18.
Yeah.
Give it some time.
I think part of what I was referring to too is it seems like the marriage age has moved up a few years. Mm-hmm. I think that's changed some. So it's
not in my church.
They're still getting married at 17?
Well, not 17. I mean, they're waiting till they're 18, 19.
Getting out of high school?
But I mean,
There's a lot of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still seeing most of the people that are getting married, like, it's between 18 and 23.
Okay.
Just constant.
Well, I also think, I know we're concentrating just on our church families and talking about this, but I also think that's the norm in the world.
Yeah.
I think that the world still pressures you to get married as well, like, or at least get into a relationship that mimics marriage.
Yes.
I can call it that,
Yes.
That pressure is still there. They might not have the legal license, but they, in all intents and purposes, are living a marriage life. And I think that still happens between the ages that you just said. So I don't think it's just a pressure from within our church. I think it's a pressure that everybody feels to get paired up as soon as possible and start living that.
As if singleness is a problem to be solved.
Yeah. Yes, because I have gotten just as equally pressured from coworkers and friends that aren't in any church affiliation whatsoever. It's just that we view marriage different. I've had my worldly friends being like, well, what's the problem? Just move in with somebody and start your relationship, have that child, So it's just a different outlook on how it's supposed to look, but the pressure of being with somebody is still there.
Okay. Yeah, that's a really good point. Maybe it's good that within the church at least, that they are getting married and then moving in together.
Great.
There's no maybe about that.
Even though they're so young.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah.
So do you hope, you're like, whatever the Lord has for you? If he has a life of singleness, it's a day by day thing. If someone comes along, you're open to that as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been seasons in my life where I've been able to handle that better. There's been seasons in my life where I have stopped praying for it, because you just lose absolute hope. So yeah, it's definitely can be difficult to remember, but being we've said, being content in where you're at. And I think that's something I would like the young people, guys and girls. Right now we're just focusing on us because we're females and we know our experience, but I think that the guys get pressured too. And so just praying for them to rely on God and be content in where God has you, I think is really important to encourage the young to do that.
I think that starts really young too, because the pressure to have a boyfriend when you're in second grade.
Yeah.
What? Seriously? And to teach that you can be content where you are and live and serve where God has you, and to teach that there's a joy that comes from that. Yeah. That you can't get anywhere else. You can be doing all the things or not doing all the things, but if you're not living where God has called you to be, you're not going to be content.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have joy.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with us. I mean, I know Joy, in our conversation we had at the camp out, is people have asked me in my 20s and my 30s, what's wrong with you? Flat out, right to my face, what is wrong with you?
What do you say? What did you say?
Well, the first few times it happened, because it happened more than once, but, and I would just be like, well, you're asking the wrong person. You have to ask God that question. And I don't know why I said it one day. I mean, obviously God put those words in my mouth, because it does. It draws you up short. And it's like, is there something wrong with me? Yeah. Maybe there is. And I just didn't know it, but I just remember that one time those words just flew out of my mouth, and it was an elderly couple, and they have since passed away. And I knew that they weren't being vicious, but once again, it's one of those times where the devil is using Christians to harm you. And I just realized, okay, this isn't coming from a bad place. So I'm going to turn it back on them and say, well, I don't know. You're asking the wrong person. You need to ask God that question. And when he answers it, please let me know. And that kind of changed my mindset in that time period too, because I think I was in my mid to late 20s. And from that point on, I was just like, that is the right answer to that. God knows, I don't.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Some questions that people ask are just so funny. We've moved a lot, and I always get the question, well, do you think you'll stay in New Hampshire then? I'm just like, I mean, I kind of want to go like, you know, I'm not going to say that I'm going to go here and there and I'm going to buy and sell because who even knows if I'll be here tomorrow, you know? Isn't that what the scripture says? And so, or like, oh, this house that you're building, is this your forever house? And I was just like, my forever house? I mean, that's eternity. That's in heaven, right? So I don't know. Like, we don't know. And one of you said, God could put someone in your path really soon, like next week. And like, who knows what would happen or maybe never. And coming to a place where you're just content with whatever it is that he has for you. And we don't know, like, I think a lot of these questions that people ask are just, they're sort of silly in a way. Maybe I'm sure I ask them too. You're just sometimes just trying to make small talk, right?
Yeah.
Just trying to fill space, but.
Yeah. And some people don't know how to approach us.
Yeah. I know. I was going to ask, what's some other stuff that people have said to you that like, what should people not say to people who are living single?
So this is more of a joke, but it's kind of apropos. But you know, at a lot of weddings, people come up, you're next. And you're like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. Yeah. Like, you know, like, how do you think that is even the case? This is obviously, like Jenny said, when we were in our younger, but I had read somewhere where some guy went to everybody at the next funeral and said, don't worry, you're next. Don't worry, the same people. So, but,
most of the time when we get things like that, it's not coming from a vicious place. No. I mean, they're truly trying to be encouraging, but yet it's not, you know, and they don't realize that. And I remember it was actually happened at my sister's wedding, and she got married when she was 44. And somebody came up to me, an older gentleman, and he was just trying to be really encouraging and stuff. And I said, hey, you know, that's great. Thanks for doing that. And then I told him how old I was. He just immediately stopped talking. It was like, oh, I didn't realize, you know, it's like he almost didn't realize how old I was, and that there might not be as much hope for me as there would have been when I was younger. And it just made me chuckle a little bit, you know, because I am older, and so you can handle it a little bit more. But truly, I think everybody's trying to be encouraging to you. They know the benefits of being married. They know the joy that comes with being married. And they just want us to have that joy as well. Yeah. And so I think that knowing that makes things a lot better when people do approach you. But, you know, I think at this age now, people don't approach me that way anymore. And I guess it's okay.
There's one benefit to getting older in singleness is like people have stopped doing that.
They've stopped. But I think that sometimes what I have noticed, though, being single, now all of everybody in my age group now who has been married, like Maija said, their kids are graduating, they're getting married, they're becoming grandparents. And what's interesting now is some of those friends that I had younger who have gone through those stages are now looping back around and, you know, getting back in touch with me because their families are grown and they're older. And I think some of it too is that when they're in the midst of their raising their family, they really don't think they can relate to us because they think that, you know, we're just career minded and we don't know how to relate to somebody who's trying to raise a toddler. And on some levels, that's correct. We don't because we haven't experienced it. But I would encourage married people to not shut out their single friends and don't think that there's anything that you can talk about because there is. You know, there's a lot of things that you can talk about. And I think that was tough for me in my 30s, you know, realizing that people just wouldn't approach you and wouldn't start conversations with you because they didn't think that they had anything in common with you. So that was one tough thing that I had to go through when all my friends were raising their families.
That's super good to know. I think I'm trying to think as you're saying it, have I done that? Like, did I have single friends? I'm like trying to think, did I have single friends?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I can't off the top of my head think of. If I did though, I'd probably think something along the lines of they are able to go and live their lives and have a good time. Like, why would they want to come to my house with my toddlers? Because like if I could be them, I'd be them right now.
I think there's a lot of that on both sides because I hesitate sometimes with my married friends to want to try to get together like on a weeknight. I try to say, you know what, I'm flexible. If you want to meet for breakfast, we can meet for breakfast or whatever. But I also know they want to spend time with their husband and their family, especially if their husband's working long. So I think it's just having those open lines of communication and just being willing to sit out and say, you know what, I want to have a relationship with you. You're my friend. How can we do this in this stage of life for you? And having those conversations and just making sure that people are invited, whether this is single or widowed or divorced or whatever stage of life you're in, married and maybe just feeling lonely, just making sure that people are invited to events and feel like they're included is, I think, a big part of it. And when you're going back to like what not to say, I think it's more what to maybe focus on differently. I do appreciate, like I said, there's a few people who, you know, have your genuine interest. You know, they're really interested in you as an individual and they've got specific things that have been laid on their heart to pray for about. I really appreciate that. But just saying, how's it going? And just not even focusing on your relationship status in general.
Right.
Because if that's all they ever say to you every time they see you, then you kind of feel like, well, obviously I'm lacking in your sight because you have nothing else to talk to me about. But I also understand that that might be there. As Jenny said, there's a lot of people who have a lot of good in their intention. It's just maybe an icebreaker or a way to get talking. But even just to say, ask somebody how they are and just how's life going and what have you been up to lately? Those types of things. I have a lot of people who never even ask me how I am. Period.
You know what? I think that's so common, really, because even with having kids, a lot of times if someone hasn't seen you in a while, the first question is, how are the kids?
Yes.
Not, how are you?
Yeah, as a mom, you probably feel like your kids take over that limelight then. And
I mean, I'm now, like Jenny said, I'm in that age group now where like I'm approaching 50 as well. My kids are grown. Lois and our babies are the same age. They're coming up on 15. So they don't really need us anymore. And she has multiple grandkids. I have my first grandkid. So I'm finding myself in this place where I'm just like, I have time. Like, where are my friends? Like I have, you know, so now I'm gathering some friends together and we're going line dancing classes and different things that I wasn't able to do for a long time, right? And I invite the most randomest group. Like we have a widow and like a 20-year-old who's like lonely or I think she's like 23 and having this, am I going to be single forever thing? We're like, I know we're all old ladies, but you're more than welcome to come line dancing with us. Because all her friends are getting married already.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Like Maija said, you reached out and invited her into that, and that's so important.
Yeah.
Because there is that point when you turn around and all of a sudden you're the last one standing. And like Maija said, I definitely respect the fact that now my friend's job is to be a family. And that's where the focus needs to be. Her husband needs to be primary, you know, her kids need to be primary. And I was definitely okay with taking that step back in their lives. But there are occasions where, you know, just an invite here and there to keep those relationships going is really important because, you know, it's been hard to re-engage with some of my friends that I had in my 20s.
Sure.
Even though we both have time now, it's just harder to re-engage than if we would have just kept that friendship going throughout the years. And so that's encouraging to hear that you have such a vast group of people that get together.
Yeah. It's keeps life spicy.
Yeah. Well, it's also very biblical to be able to, you know, the Titus 2 woman, you know, who you need older women to invest in the younger women and the younger women to be seeking out that. And we're all older to somebody and we're all younger to somebody. So we all have mentors and mentees and that, but just to understand that we're all in this together and we're all in the body of Christ. We have different roles, responsibilities, seasons of life, whatever it is. But we should be encouraging each other and
100%.
And our struggles are more similar than we think.
I think so. I agree.
Yeah, just the human struggle, right?
Yeah.
And every season is so different. And I think that almost everyone you talk to would say, I'm lonely at some point. I don't care if you're married and have a ton of kids or you're single or what your situation is. Everyone feels lonely at some point. And I don't know, do you think it has something to do with, it can partly be good in some ways because it can draw us into the arms of the Father. That loneliness, like we know, like no person is ever really going to feel that intimacy that we have with the Lord. Is that part of it, you think?
I think that is. I think that's a big part of it. He doesn't allow us to be content with things that are not going to be ultimately to his glory and and our relationship with him anytime here on this earth anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we still need friends. Like I call friends, Jesus with flesh on, you know?
Absolutely.
Sometimes you need someone to hug you or someone to ask you if you're okay or to know that you've been missing or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
For the introverts, I mean, if they have the house. If they miss church a little bit, someone needs to check up on Jennie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. There's
even just a text. How's it going? Yeah.
Everything all right?
Yeah. I recently heard something. I don't know if I read it in a meme or heard it, but the difference between happiness and joy being what comes from the Lord, that gives us joy. And happiness is just things that the world may provide you. Yeah. So I thought that was really, really interesting to talk about, you know, filling that void. We need the Holy Spirit to have true joy on this earth. And I thought that was really interesting to think about it that way.
Have you ever heard about how happiness is like finding $100 bill on the ground and sticking it in your pocket and going home, can't wait to like show your friend that you found this $100. And then when you reach into your pants pocket, you go to pull it out and it's missing. It's not there anymore. And all of a sudden you're not happy anymore. That's happiness. It comes and goes based off your circumstances, but joy doesn't. You have joy. Yeah, no one's going to take that from you.
Right. Definitely.
So I got a question. If you had known when you were 21 that you were going to be single today, would you have done anything differently? Any thoughts on that?
I'm not sure if I would. I might have invested a little bit more in some relationships, if that makes sense. Because a lot of times, and this might be whether I was married or single, but I relied on Sunday morning church to get my social plans pulled together. This is obviously pre-cell phone days, which we're dating ourselves. But, maybe investing in some of those relationships more. But in general, one of the things that I've talked with a lot of younger girls about is don't put off your financial planning as if you're going to get married and the guy's going to take care of you for a life, because that may not be the case even if you do get married. I started paying into retirement. This is nothing of myself. So this is someone else. This is God working through other people. But I started paying into retirement at 17.
Wow.
The same retirement system I'm still paying into, even though I've had other jobs because I've worked for public agencies. That has been a huge blessing now, knowing that I may be fully responsible for my own retirement. And so I've encouraged a lot of people to, even if you don't, I've had some friends whose husbands, maybe they were widowed or other types of situations where their husbands weren't able to work because of health or for other reasons, and they become the sole provider or a equal provider, if you will. You don't know what that's going to be like in the future. And there's nothing wrong with, I mean, we need to trust in God. Obviously, He holds our future, but we can't also go blindly into it's just going to happen. It's just going to get taken care of, because that's when we kind of get ourselves into some trouble. And so that's one of the things I've been incredibly grateful for other people in my life who have come to me and said, Maija, I think you should start paying into retirement. And I looked at her at 17 and thought, you are nuts, lady. I am 17. What in the world am I paying retirement for? Now at 47, I'm incredibly grateful for those 30. Well, it's not quite, because I worked through high school and college part-time. So that was definitely not full-time there, but to have that many years of retirement has been a huge blessing. And, I prayed about each step of my career each time as well. And I think I would really encourage people to do that, because I was all set to throw all that away and move down to Vancouver, because that's where life was, not in Seattle. It was down in Vancouver. And I literally felt like I was laying out my fleece in front of God, saying, well, all right, well, if you feel like I need to go to college, then I need scholarships to pay for it. I got the scholarship, so I stayed in Seattle.
Yeah.
But that's where, if you think about it, it's just praying. The advice I would be is just pray before every one of these major decisions, and pray before, even not just when they're coming, but pray ahead of time that God would open hearts to wherever he would lead. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I would do anything drastically different, only from this, maybe travel more. But from the standpoint is I think every one of our experiences shape who we are today, and God uses those. And so I don't have any huge thing that I would have changed differently.
Yeah.
And I can say the same, because when I think back of all those major adult decisions that we have to make, I would go into them with prayer. I went to college right out of high school, and I was still like, okay, Lord, do I do this? And it was like, yep. So I got an associate degree, a 2-year associate degree in business, and went to work. And then later, realized my earning potential isn't quite there where I need it to go, and prayed about that, and God opened the door for me to go back to college and finish my bachelor's degree. And so I did that, and pretty much doubled my earning potential, and was able to get another job. And the job I got right after my bachelor's degree, I thought I was going to retire in that job, and God had other plans, and he literally shoved me out of that job. And I say it that way because I did not want to leave that job, but the job ended, and that was all in God's hands. He ended, and he shoved me out of there, and now I'm where I'm at now with the college. And, so when you say, is there any regrets? Would I do anything different? No, because like Maija said, when you pray about it and you say, thy will be done, and he makes things happen for you. He has doors open for you. People call you and offer you positions just out of the blue. And you're like, okay, is this where I need to go? And every one of those places that I've ended up, I have felt that, yes, this is where God wants you today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And like I said earlier on, any relationship regrets that I've had, I haven't had any. So if you say, would I change anything? I don't think I would, because then it would almost be questioning where God put me,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't want to question that, because this is where he has me. And, I had a job once just for 3 months and that was it. It was a 3-month job. God still put me there. Mm-hmm. And then,
he's so good.
And then I realized, okay, this isn't where I need to be. And there was another door that opened for me, and I went through that door. So it's interesting to look at it that way. I'm sure I've made a ton of mistakes along the way, but it's been fine. And, whether I also have retirement plans and things in place, but still, God will take care of us where we need to be. And, that's how I'm going to continue living my life, praying about what my hopes and dreams are, but ending it with thy will be done, because that's where it is.
That's good.
I have a question. Can I ask a question now? I'm curious if either of you have ever used any of the dating apps. Online dating.
I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert, and I will say no. That terrifies me.
I have never been led to. I've had a lot of people ask me that question, and I've thought a little bit about it, and I've never felt led to that. Yeah. So I figure, why push something when if you pray about it and it's just not there. I know some people who have great relationships that have met on dating apps, so I'm not against them. It just hasn't been for me at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I never even think about them until somebody asks. So,
yeah. If you think it's because, we all grew up, because we're all like around the same age, and we grew up without smartphones and internet and all of that, right? Yeah. And so maybe it's a little bit out of our wheelhouse, where the younger generation's doing more of that. But just to let you know, I've heard it's a disaster out there on those things. So you're probably dodging some huge bullets anyway. So just keep doing what you're doing, and probably just stay away from them. I heard even Christian music's gone a little sideways. So yeah, it's probably best if you don't, but whatever you want to do. I'm not trying to tell you how to live your life, but just super curious.
I like how when you were talking about, God put your husband in front of you. He will do that for all of us. It doesn't matter where we're at. It doesn't matter if that person we're supposed to be with lives on a different continent. If God wants us to be together, he will put us in front of each other. So, and if that's online or if that's in person, whatever it might be, it will happen. And I think when I realized that too, because I think one of my uncles were challenging me in my 20s and saying, you need to go to more places. And I was going to services that our church traditionally has.
You need to go to conventions.
Yes. And I would be like, well, I do go to conventions, and I would throw these things back at him. And I'd be like, and finally I was like, well, don't you trust God that he will, we will meet. And then I was able to point out quite a few other relationships where, one half of the couple was living in Alaska and one was in Arizona, and they met. And I was there with them the day that they met. And it's like, it doesn't matter where we're at. When God wants to put us together, whether it's online, dating app, or in person, he'll put us together.
You're right. Yeah.
And to take that pressure off of us. That's what it is for me. It totally takes the pressure off. And I will pray when I go to a service. I still do it today. Be like, okay, if I'm going to a special services, I will pray beforehand. If I'm going to meet someone, please open my eyes and be acceptable. Because I think what happens when we get older and we remain single, we do get comfortable in that. We're very independent. We're content in that on some level. So I do think that my prayers have changed a little bit to it being like, okay, God, you need to open my eyes if there is a potential for a relationship, because I'm not seeking it. So you need to slap me in the face or something and be like, okay, here it is.
Well, so I was trying to look up some data on singleness in the United States and stuff before we got on, and there's a lot of varied stuff, but it was a Pew Research thing that I just kind of wanted to know how many people over the age of 18 in the United States are still single, and it came back at about 31%. But the interesting thing was that it said the 31% of singles, half of them aren't looking for a partner. The other half are. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And for various reasons, I kind of skimmed the article as I went down, and part of it is, and I think women made up more of the singleness than the men, because women outlive men typically. So there's a lot of women that get widowed tend to not remarry, which is so interesting because men that are widowed have a higher chance of getting remarried than women. And it's more though, as I talk to widowed women, they don't want to get remarried. They're like, I've been that, I've done that, I've taken care of someone, I've done, and I'm totally content being single. Where the men are a little bit more like, I need someone to still take care of me because I was married all those years and someone took care of me, and so who's going to take care of me, is a lot of what happens with that. And I thought that was really funny as I've talked to a lot of the widows in our church, because we have 25 widows in our church, and one man, my dad, who's the only widowed man. So there's lots of jokes you can imagine.
Yeah.
But anyway, half of the single people out there aren't even looking for a partner. They're just content where they're at. And, maybe that's part of it. I love, it's been interesting talking to you girls about it. I've always wondered what my life would have been like had I just stayed single forever, right? Because I wasn't, like I was saying, I wasn't the girl who grew up saying oh, I can't wait to get married and have this dress and have this family and kids and whatever. I never pursued that. I never dreamed of it. I actually saw myself being like you, like one of you, and not being like this. And so it was actually kind of almost shook me off balance when I don't even know why I did it. Honestly, I was so young. I don't know, but I pictured myself like that. And then, so I've wondered over time, I wonder what would have happened had I not gotten married and had the 3 kids that I have. But I mean, it's a pointless
Right.
thought. I understand how pointless the thought is, but anyway, I'm living vicariously through you for a moment in time. That's all I'm saying.
Well, and I know you already know this, but you've been blessed with 3 children. So we also feel the same thing, in the reverse on occasion where, you're like, oh, wow, you're blessed with all these kids. Cause I think as women, God does put that desire in us. And I'm not saying every female out there wants to have kids, cause there are some who don't, but for a majority of us, I think that is an innate thing within us to want to have those children. And so you are truly blessed.
Yeah. No, I am absolutely blessed, and I'm very thankful in my life. I'm content with it, and I'm glad the way that it turned out. And it's been a bumpy road, but has had a lot of highs as well, of course.
Yeah.
But,
So do we have anything else that we need to talk about?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. No.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't either.
Stacey?
Well, like, is there anything that you would say if you had a younger single girl standing in front of you that was like heartbroken? Like, she's like, all her friends have gotten married already. She hasn't. Like, let's say she's like 30. Like, do you have advice? Like, besides, of course, you've already given a ton of advice, but is there anything more that you...
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you have to grieve. I mean, if she's brokenhearted, that's what she's feeling at the moment, right? Mm-hmm. And you do have to grieve the fact that you have other people have taken the place in friendships that you've had, right? But also is to really point back to God and on His will and to, well, Jenny talked about pressure, and I think that's probably sometimes we put it on ourselves, sometimes it's external pressure, but to really focus on God and who He is and to seek for that contentment at that particular stage in life. And whatever we say is not going to make that hurt go away immediately. Only God can do that, and only the Holy Spirit can make that hurt go away and refocus that attention. Because there are times when it'll just hit you and you just need to work through it. And then you need to also come out the other side with your eyes focused on Christ again, because that's what happens, I think, for me, is when I turn my eyes away from Christ and back on myself and my situation is when things get hard. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know if I have any good advice for that person other than to say, God is faithful, and go work through this. Tell Him what you're feeling. Yeah. Explain to Him. I mean, He knows already what you're feeling, but if you verbalize it to Him, what you're feeling, He brings a calm and a peace in time. Yes. Sometimes it's instant. Sometimes it's the next day. Mm-hmm. But He will bring that, and He will remind you who He is and that He has a plan for you. And it may not be maybe 180 degrees from what you thought it was going to be, but He does have a plan for each one of us. And it's not about me. In reality, it's about Him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that I wouldn't have any words in that moment, but just a big hug.
A big hug. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You said something, the way that you worded it, you said you have to grieve the fact that other people have taken the place in the friendships.
Yeah. Like so if you think about it, you are no longer someone's best friend.
Yes.
You are no longer whatever. So you have to put that distance. You have to realize that your life is different. Your relationship with that person is different.
Yeah.
Whether it's a sibling or a best friend or whatever that ends up being. So there's a lot you have to grieve with that. And that's okay. You need to go through that because God has a different role for you in that particular season of life. But if we just go through life without understanding that role has changed, I think that's where we don't manage our own expectations. And sometimes I think we have expectations that we don't even realize until they're not met. Yeah. And then to just go through them and realize, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Okay, so I have to do that, or whatever that ends up being. When people move away, because a lot of times marriage will take somebody into a different state or a different location. Mm-hmm. Those are all changes in your life. They're changes that every one of us face, whether we're married and whatever. But yeah.
I suppose, though, the one difference with that, though, if I think about it, is that the person that is married has that constant companion, though. So even if they move to a different state or they go through the different things, they have that constant companion, where the people in their life that get married and get taken away, you still then are alone. And so people keep getting taken away from you without leaving you with the one constant, maybe.
Right.
And so that definitely is the difference there.
Yeah. Yes. And both Maija and myself are in the position where we're the last sibling that isn't married.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that, speaks to a lot of what Maija's talking about as well. You have those relationships and then it's changed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Thanks. Yeah, that's tough. It's something I haven't given thought to. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because that could make me cry a little bit. Almost like, because I haven't thought about it, because I've made it this far in life without realizing that.
Yeah.
That's what could make me cry about it.
Yeah. And I remember talking to one of my, in the course of a conversation with my uncle and his wife, we were talking and I just felt like, wait a minute, you have to realize being the last sibling not married is hard.
Mm-hmm.
Going to those family functions can be hard. Mm-hmm. And I think that, my aunt especially, she just was like, oh my gosh, just like your reaction. I hadn't thought about it. Like, well, you have to think about that because it is hard.
Mm-hmm.
And, instead of judging that person for their reactions, instead of criticizing them for maybe not showing up, maybe just, praying for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow. Absolutely.
Yeah. And letting them know that you value them for them.
For them.
Not because they're half of someone else.
Right. Yep.
And they're not half a person.
No.
We say, my better half or whatever, my other half. But neither of you are half people. You're whole people.
No.
Yeah.
It's so strange to me how many parallels I see. And I know I keep talking about widows, but I help with the widows group at my church, and they're lovely people. It's my favorite group to hang out with. Those women are just, I don't even know. I can't even put it into words, but there's so many similarities about I feel like a half of a person. I don't feel like I fit anywhere. I don't feel like I belong anywhere. Like, I always feel like a third wheel, like all of these things, and there's some similarities there. And of course there would be, because it's singleness again.
Yeah.
It's forced singleness again after not being single. And so you don't have a choice in it. It just happens to you.
Right.
So even for those that aren't currently single, that are married, some of us may be single again.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is something that I think is really important, that we understand it a little bit better. So I appreciate you guys sharing your hearts.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you both for agreeing to do this and coming on and giving us insight into something that we hadn't considered and don't have our own personal insight into. So I know there are people listening who are going to appreciate it very much.
Sometimes it's just good to know you're not alone, right? There's other people going through the same thing that you're going through, and that they understand. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that Maija and I are very, very lucky. I mean, we have other single friends as well who are walking the same path that we are. And we've been in a financial situation where we can travel a lot. I mean, we've both been very lucky in that situation. So we have taken advantage of our singleness in multiple ways and been able to explore this world and get to know each other a lot better. Even though Maija and I are cousins, we have several, our single friends that we've gotten to know and enjoy more in our travels. And that's a huge blessing as well, to be able to share this walk with other people.
Yeah, and I think really grateful just even for our married friends who understand and accept us for who we are. And the same thing is always praying that we'll be seeing the needs in others as well. So yeah, part of the whole family.
Awesome.
Stacey, do you want to read that Elizabeth Elliot quote?
Yeah, I came across this in searching about singleness. So Elizabeth Elliot says, if you are single today, the portion assigned to you for today is singleness. It is God's gift. Singleness ought not to be viewed as a problem, nor marriage as a right. God, in his wisdom and love, grants either as a gift.
Amen.
Amen. That's what I thought. I thought that just puts this a little bow right on top of this podcast.
Yeah.
So thank you both for coming.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yes.
And for being interested.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I was just going to say, thanks for asking the questions at the camp out and thinking about having us on.
You are so welcome. I appreciate it.
Well, I'll see you at the wedding next month.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing you there.
That's so funny.
No, the funny thing is even though I'm related to the Dunstans and whatever, I wasn't invited to the wedding.
Oh, you weren't?
No. But
you're still going though. Are you going to be my plus one?
So I work at the church, and the treasurer at the church, it's her grandson that's getting married.
Okay.
And
yeah,
so she's
Adrian.
going, so she's going to the wedding, and she was all like, oh, I hate having to go to these things by myself because she's a widow. And I was like, I'll go as your plus one. She's like, to a wedding in Michigan. And I was like, it's the Dunstan wedding, right? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, I'll know like half the people there probably.
Yeah.
Or at least like I'll recognize their faces and not know their names. So it'll be super awkward. But I was like, I'll go. So she's like thrilled. So I'm going as the grandmother's plus one.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
All right.
Yeah. All right. Hey, it's been a pleasure talking to you, ladies.
Likewise.
You're quite the gems.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, hey, have a great rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
too.
See ya.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.